Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on Winsight Live. Hot off the virtual presses at Winsight Grocery Business, a couple of big stories this morning. Spartan Nash, which signed a 7-year distribution deal with Amazon last week, has also signed a deal to take over a massive former U.S. Foods distribution center in suburban Washington, D.C., that also for a term of 7 years. Whether that's a coincidence, they're not sharing a whole lot of details on their plans for it beyond saying that it would better serve their customers in the Northeast. But given Amazon's appetite for a greater influence in the U.S. grocery business, you got to figure that's going to be part of it. Also this morning, Ocado revealed it has acquired a stake in Myrmex Robotics, which is a company that has developed a automated system that would facilitate contactless and contactless pickup for grocery at the point of pickup, using robotics and a series of racks and proprietary bins that would deliver to a window at a store in the style of an ATM, or use an offsite locker, refrigerated locker, or perhaps a dark store for that. We'll have more detail on that story coming up, as I've got an interview scheduled with Myrmex and Ocado executives later this afternoon, Phil.
So, John, why don't we just get to the point? Amazon's going to buy everything. Whether they take a stake in everything or every retailer, Amazon is on a tear. And, Jeff Bezos said, years ago, I want to be in the food business. I want to own the food business. And it's looking that way.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've been successful at disrupting every industry that they've gone to, and food is something of a final frontier for them. And it's obviously very important because, one, people like shopping. Two, they do it all the time. The food business survives all kinds of
pandemics,
economic ups and downs and everything else. So It's a great place for them to be. They're bringing innovation and data and customer, a massive customer base. And we said it before, we'll say it again. They've got advantages coming into grocery that like no other new player has ever had. And it looks like, we're getting details now of a little bit of the detail of sort of how they're going to do it and the partners they're going to choose to go with, and Spartan Nash being one of those.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to really watch that space. Now, I don't know how many of you saw this story. It's a couple days old. I just came across it today. Sally Smithwick, who's our managing editor, brought it to our attention. But how many of you remember Pabst Blue Ribbon beer? Okay, so I grew up in the New York area, and I remember right by the gardens, adjacent to the Garden State Parkway, was a Pabst factory. And you could smell the brewing, thousands of feet away. That's why I want to share this story, because Pabst has now come up with cannabis-infused seltzer. It's actually a division of Pabst that's owned by some ex-Pabst employees, so it's a different company. But it has 5 milligrams of THC in it, and they think that this is going to be the hottest thing since beer, I guess. What do you guys think? Are you anxious? It's only going to launch in California to begin with, so I'll probably taste it before the rest of you. But what do you think? Good idea, bad idea?
Like they went to a lab and created trends and put it in a can, right? Seltzer's a trend, CBD's a trend. It might will get out there.
It'll work at first for sure. People are going to buy it.
Yep. I don't think they're going to be the only one to do this sort of thing. I was at a conference a couple of years ago about cannabis and food in California, and Ocean Spray was there. And they've been thinking about this for a while, and I think there are going to be plenty of other beverage and food brands that are going to come out with something similar.
So, Jen, they're going to also launch in Denver. You going to run out and get a can?
Well, that was like when I was a really little kid. I would like borrow a can of Pabst Blue Ribbon from my grandparents and put a bow on the top of it and give that to my dad as a Christmas present. I think that was his Christmas present like more than 1 year in a row.
Oh my God. Love it. Love it.
Greatest present ever.
Yeah, let's get back to more serious stuff. So Jackson, you reported on a new technology that I am fascinated with. Before I let you talk, I want to tell you that there's a company down in Kentucky by the name of Pan Austin, and Pan Austin makes check stands. And I want to say it was maybe 6 years ago. I was there, and Jim Vance, who's the CEO, showed me this device, which would take a full shopping cart, a full-size shopping cart. You put it into this unit, and it scanned everything automatically. And then at the other end, you just take your shopping cart, and you're done with your shopping trip. Nothing ever happened with it. Obviously, there were probably some issues with people with technology and so on. But now you're telling us about a new technology that is similar, but probably a lot better.
Well, better is certainly relative when it comes to tech, but I think it definitely fits, small format stores. So the company Caper has come out with a smart counter, essentially. And I've seen, similar to your story, I've seen a lot of pieces of technology similar to this. They call it a counter, but it's really more of a box that you put your purchases in, and it scans everything that you put in there. It's built for stores that are about 10,000 square feet or less, so it's pretty perfect for convenience stores. But frankly, right now, I know that Deloitte has been playing with technology like this. I don't know if this company in particular. I know they put a social media post up showing something similar to this. I've also seen, I think it was NCR, don't quote me on that. It might have been another POS company in a C-store conference about a year ago, showing similar technology that they were just playing with. So I think that this sort of box that you place your purchases in, the box scans it, and you can pay with whatever way that piece of technology has ready. I think that's going to be a very common thing in convenience stores and smaller format shops, just because it's a quick, easy plug in and play kind of thing. All you got to do is set it down on your counter, plug the thing in, and it'll be able to check things out quickly for you.
And you're our tech expert, but I would also think that the accuracy is better than like the Amazon Go and the AI technology and stuff that's out there. Is that true?
It very well could be. I haven't had a chance to play with it myself, but one thing I will say to that is that, last week I talked about the Palm payment from Amazon One, and frankly, I've spoken with the folks behind Amazon Go a couple of times, and they don't really think of Amazon Go as a convenience store, which I always thought was a little silly because, from my perspective, it's, if the shoe fits. But I think for them, Amazon Go is more of a laboratory where they can try out ideas. I could see the Amazon One Palm payment system make more sense in a stadium. Whereas, just because the technology is fancier doesn't mean it's necessarily better for, a certain sector of retail. And I think things like Caper Counter are much more zeroed in on what retailers really need when they're looking for a frictionless, mostly touchless experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When I saw the picture of it, I guess the only thing that I had to wonder, and you might know this, I'm assuming that the lid actually opens up so that the cashier can actually get in there and clean it if something spills. But it didn't look to me like, it was easy to get in there and clean up.
That's a good question. Again, I would love to be able to, get out of my house more so I could play with one of these things. But
we'd love for you to get out of your house more too. You need to see the world.
I do.
I mean, Phil, I'll just say that from a video they showed, it's really not necessarily a box, but rather an open box that's kind of see-through on both sides. And it's worth mentioning here that Caper is the same company that was sort of the pioneer of the smart cart, which is now in some Sobeys stores in Canada and some local stores right here in Queens, New York, where it does the same thing. The Amazon smart cart, or whatever they're calling it now, is doing in their stores. One of the Caper executives mentioned to me that the customers loved it so much, and the retailers that worked with loved it so much because it was bringing up higher average baskets by something like 17%. This was
Wow.
some time ago. He told me this, but because it could do things like offer recipes and additional, suggest automatically, you put tomato sauce into things. So did you get the pasta? Did you get the basil? Did you, the cheese, right? You always forget the cheese. Things like that, and build a basket, convenience for the customer, data for the retailer and Caper. So all really clever advancements in technology we're seeing.
It's smart. I want to say it was about 10 years ago that on the Today Show, I did a coffee taste test. And Brett, I want you to weigh in on this. At the time, and things have changed, McDonald's had just changed their coffee recipe. 7-Eleven just changed theirs. The number one that came out was Dunkin' Donuts as the best coffee in America. Number two was 7-Eleven. I know you've just put together a list of the best convenience store coffees. Who's on that list these days?
So this is a very recent list, and sorry if you hear a siren in the background. So Technology, our sister research firm.
Well, we know it's live. We know it's live. We're not recorded.
Yes. They put out every quarter, they collect consumer brand metrics on consumer ratings on how they enjoy different coffee programs. So these recent numbers were collected between January and I believe July of this year. And in dominating fashion, Stewart's Shops, which is a chain of more than 300 stores in upstate New York, they won. Over 55% of consumers reported very good coffee at Stewart's, more than any other chain that had at least 100 reviews. So some of the other ones on there, Quick Trip with a K came in at 52%, Pilot Co. at about 52%, and then Wawa 51%. Racetrack, Quick Check, Family Express, Cumberland Farms, Travelson of Americas, and Quick Trip with a Q rounded out the top 10. But Stewart's with a surprising victory there.
Yeah, and 7-Eleven didn't even make the list.
7-Eleven did not make this list, no.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear that. Talking about, coffee, let's talk about fresh. And Jen, there's a lot of things going on about fresh. Obviously, for a few years, retailers have been focused on fresh, lots of sign about fresh, bringing in lots of fresh foods. But what's the latest update on fresh, and how is it changing?
Yeah, Phil, fresh food has just exploded during the pandemic. We just finished our annual fresh food handbook, which will go live next week with IRI. We do it every year, and it's just incredible. When we're talking fresh, I
think we lost Jen for a second. John, maybe you can help us out on some of the new innovations in fresh.
Yeah, well, Jen, sorry. I hope that siren wasn't for Jen. Maybe they came up.
God forbid.
And got her. So Jen did a couple of stories on fresh. One was a Deloitte study, and I'm going to have to remind myself of this, of the particular details that she was to share with us. But the Deloitte study kind of looked at the pandemic and the performance of fresh food, during those, these past couple of months, and indicated that obviously consumers, they're buying more stuff, but they're also buying more fresh food stuff. And I urge you guys to take a look at the link up on winsightgrocerybusiness.com. It's going to be able to summarize that story better than I am right now. The other thing that Jen was here to talk about was a really cool initiative from Wakeford Food Corp's ShopRite's stores. They announced just this week that 3 of their stores, one in Connecticut, one in Jersey, one in New York, if I'm not mistaken, have unveiled these kind of revamped produce departments in their stores, which integrate not just the fresh food, but the prepared foods and the meals and these other things, a completely new layout for these things. So merchandising and reimagination of the produce section at 3 of those stores. They say, and I'm sure they'll base this on sort of the performance here, but this is likely coming to a bunch of different, a bunch of other stores. And that's really, kind of a fascinating merchandising movement from ShopRite. I see Jen's trying to hook back on. Let's circle back to her when she gets a chance.
Sure. So John, I have to wonder when I look at the fresh and produce combination, whether or not that's probably being led by Village, who obviously bought a couple of years ago Gourmet Garage and now Fairway. Both formats have always included prepared foods in with produce or adjacent to produce. Do you think that there's any learnings besides all the trouble with Fairway and things like that Village is able to get and then pass on to the people at Wakefern as it relates to prepared foods?
I wouldn't know that specifically, Phil, but obviously, all of the ShopRite operators, or many of them anyway, are really kind of, I think they're one of these. It's a cooperative, so the idea is, let's set the independents free on doing cool things, and then when they succeed, let's share them with the rest of the group. And I'm sure at some level, there are probably any number of grocers from the cooperative that might have contributed to this particular thing. And with retail merchandising changes and those kinds of things, they tend to roll out slowly. They're tested in a few locations. They're refined over time, and then they kind of operationalize it and send it out through the whole chain. But to your point, there's no doubt that the companies like Village that have been really out in front of the prepared food movement, it was probably one of the contributors to this. We also wrote just last week about another ShopRite operator whose name's escaping me at the moment, who opened a cool new store that also included a whole lot of food service stuff. And these guys do, look, the ShopRite is all about like selling mass quantities of stuff. They know how to do it, and if a better fresh merchandising with different departments and fresh foods and prepared meals and all that stuff works, they'll lean into that.
And let's also not forget that because of the pandemic, that salad bar that used to be in the produce department, is now basically a prepared food bar in packages. It's a good location to be able to really sell prepared foods, and it's changing, the footprint of produce. So with that, do we have Jen back?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. What John speculated on was that siren that we heard that we thought was, coming for Brett was actually coming for you. I'm glad to see it's not true.
I'm sorry about that. Well, I'm not sure where I cut out, but and I know.
So you just cut out again, but I don't know if you can hear me, but where John left off was on the Deloitte study. We talked a bit about ShopRite, but if you hear us and we can hear you, let's talk about Deloitte. If not, we'll push it to next week. So with that, I guess it falls to me to close us up with some, good news. And I guess I don't have any good news today, except the Pabst Blue Ribbon, original lemon that's coming to California and Denver and some other cities. So thank you for, yeah.
I've got plenty of good news. Yesterday, something we didn't mention in this call, and we were just talking about, Northeast competition. Yesterday, Acme Markets.
Yes.
Kings, which is another strong fresh food merchandiser in New Jersey. As we talked about on this show some time ago, Kings is and also the owner of Balducci stores, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in August and had a $75 million offer from a private equity firm to acquire the chain. That bid is in bankruptcy court, went to an auction last week or early this week, where it turns out that Acme, the division of Albertsons, was the leading bidder with a $96.4 million bid for 27 of the stores. That's not quite all of them, and we're not quite sure at this point which of them are. But interesting that Acme says a couple things. One, they're going to run King's and Balducci's under their current banners, so they're not going to change them into Acme's like they did with another bankrupt New Jersey retailer. They acquired a number of stores at Pathmark and A&P. And you look, maybe they went to school on some of those A&P things, which they reopened very quickly and didn't necessarily get the same bang for the buck for some of those stores than did, some of their competitors that closed those things for 6 months and made sure, like ShopRite, made sure that, when they did reopen them under their banners, they were kicking butt. The other interesting thing that was sort of buried in that information that Albertsons has sort of acknowledged but not talked a lot about was that, in joining Acme, they're also joining Safeway East, because Albertsons behind the scenes combined the operations of Safeway East and Acme earlier this year under Jim Perkins, who's been a great leader for them over the years. Finally, one last goofy thing here. King's CEO Judy Spires is a former president of Acme. So, it's not clear what Judy's future is, with this company, but obviously these people all know one another and respect one another's business. So interesting thing there. That's a little bit of good news, I guess, if you're a King's creditor, also good news.
Yeah. And also, John, to be honest with you, one of the things that, I used to be a King shopper when I was in New Jersey. There was one right down from my apartment, but also Balducci. I am so disappointed from where Balducci was and where they are now. Again, going back to our days at the Today Show, when we had to put together, cooking segments or, just vegetables or whatever it is, we would only shop at Balducci's because they only had the best. So I hope that now with the right funding and everything else, we can have Balducci's and King's return to their former, greatness, because they were both great chains. And, you might remember, John, I don't know if anybody else will remember, but Joanna Pruce, the cookbook author now, was the one who started the King's Cooking School, which was the first ever cooking school in supermarkets. And again, this goes back about 30 years ago. If not longer. So, I hope that this influx of money and infrastructure and operations can really do some great things. So yes, great news for, I think, everybody, including their creditors, as you pointed out. So thank you all for joining us today. Again, our archives are on Restaurant Business, CSP, Winsight Grocery Business, Supermarket Guru on our websites and on our Facebook pages. We hope you have a great weekend. We look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Have a great weekend, be safe, and wear a mask.